Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I warmly welcome you all to our webinar discussion on the current situation in Ethiopia. I would like to express my gratitude to our panelists, His Excellency Dr. Gideon Timotheos, Attorney General of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, His Excellency Mr. Mtikku Kasa, Commissioner of Disaster Prevention and Preparedness Commission, and His Excellency Mr. Tasfahun Gobezai, Director General of Agency for Refugees and Returnees Affairs, for availing their time to address this important issue. My gratitude goes equally to invited guests, among others, representatives of various media houses, think tanks, the European Union Parliament, the ACP Secretariat based in Brussels, and all those following this event on our social media. Officials from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ethiopian ambassadors based in Europe are also here present. Immediately after the completion of the law and order operation on the 28th of November 2020, the focus of the Government of Ethiopia has been directed to the following points: provision of much needed humanitarian assistance, bringing the perpetrators before the law, investigating alleged atrocities and abuses in the region, reconstruction of damaged infrastructure, reinstating the local government and reassuring the community. Currently, a lot of deliberate misinformation and disinformation is circulating on the situation in Ethiopia through different social and mainstream media. The Embassy of Ethiopia in Brussels has thus organized this webinar to bring this lack of balance in information dissemination about my country, Ethiopia. Now, I'd like to invite our distinguished audience to reflect on the following key points while listening to our respected panelists. Why would a government that embarked on a popular, massive political and economic reform since April 2018 opt to derail the process? What could a sovereign government in any part of the world do other than ascertaining law and order where the very core of its national defense is attacked? Why would a Nobel laureate, in the name of His Excellency Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, would opt for non-pacific means of settling differences if things were not totally out of line? Why has the international media chosen to create a very extreme and imbalanced story rather than checking facts on the ground? After being on the helm for 27 years, why hasn't the TPLF clique learned from the demands of the people and opted to partake in the irreversible reform process and political dialogue? Why would the TPLF choose to ransack the infrastructures that are of the utilities of the people of Tigray and left us with a mammoth task of rebuilding? Ethiopia, throughout its history, has had many deeds of justice and harmony. The victory of Adwa, of which its 125th anniversary will be celebrated next Monday, Ethiopian cities like Harar and Wello that have been recognized as cities of peace and religious harmony are just to name a few. Why then should it be difficult to see Ethiopia in the prism of its socio-cultural makeup, nurtured through the millennia, that of mutual respect and togetherness? These are points I would like you to ponder at while you'll be listening to the panelists. Now, after we follow the speakers, the floor will be open for the participants for possible questions and comments. A few housekeeping matters. We kindly ask you to limit your questions or comments after the presentations to about 2 minutes only. The chat box can be used to pose questions or comments so that we'll have efficiency of time. And having said this, again, in the interest of time, I will consecutively introduce our panelists and then I'll invite them to take the floor. I'll start with His Excellency Dr. Gideon Timotheos. He is the Attorney General of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia. Prior to joining the current administration, he has been a faculty member of the Addis Ababa University School of Law. He has served as a Deputy Attorney General as well, and he has studied law at the Addis Ababa University and at the Central European University. Our second panelist is His Excellency Ato Mutiko Kasa. He is a Commissioner for National Disaster Risk Management Commission. Mr. Mutiko served as a junior expert in the Ministry of Planning and Economic Development for 10 years. Since December 11, 2015, he has been serving as Commissioner for National Disaster Risk Management Commission. He puts his fingerprints in combating droughts and drought challenges in Ethiopia in 2016 and in 2017, as well as displacement challenges since 2017. Since December 2019, he has been serving as a member of the United Nations Secretary General's high-level panel on internal displacements. He earned his BSc degree in agriculture from Alemaya University of Agriculture and his MSc degree in aquaculture from Wageningen University of Agriculture in the Netherlands. Our last but not least panelist will be His Excellency Mr. Tesfahun Gobezai. He's currently the Director General of the Agency of Refugees and Returnees Affairs. He started serving as a junior intelligence analyst in Information Network Security Agency at the INSA in 2007. Then with the rank of intelligence analyst as a director of Cyber Governance Policy Directorate for about 11 years. He has served as a national security advisor with the rank of state minister to the Prime Minister of Ethiopia for almost 2 years. He has received his bachelor's degree in political science and international relations from Addis Ababa University and his master's degree in transformational leadership and change from University of Greenwich. I have not mentioned the year this gentleman has graduated and when they have done their masters because I don't want to disclose their ages. But as you can see, all of them are very, very young. They wouldn't worry about that. So without further ado, I will invite His Excellency Dr. Gideon Timotheos to the floor. Thank you very much. Dr. Gideon, please. The floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Madam Ambassador. First of all, I would like to express my appreciation and gratitude for the FDRE Embassy in Brussels for organizing this platform and for extending an invitation to me. So the topic that has been that I've been asked to speak on is current human rights situation in Ethiopia. And I have organized my remarks in 3 parts, and I'll try to keep my remarks as brief as possible. I'll take 15 to 20 minutes maximum to address this point. Now, the first matter I will raise would be to look into the context and background of our current human rights situation. I'll also delve into the genesis and the reasons behind the current challenge we are facing. And finally, I would say a few words about what I think are the appropriate responses and how we are responding to the challenge we are facing. Now, as far as the context and background of the situation we find ourselves in is concerned, prior to 2018, most of you are aware of the fact that we had a repressive and autocratic regime with a track record of systemic human rights abuse and violation. Now, this is not to say that everything prior to 2018 was bleak and gloom. There were many achievements and positive developments and progress prior to 2018. But be that as it may, it's also well established that our track record when it comes to human rights prior to 2018, our track record when it comes to democracy, human rights, civil liberties was not very positive. Things particularly, there have been ups and downs, but things particularly took a turn for the worse after the 2005 election. Fast forward to 2015. In 2015, after the general election, the ruling party was declared to have won all the seats that were contested in the election. And subsequent to that, there have been widespread non-violent protests in many parts of the country. These protests persisted for more than 2 years. And as a result of these protests and the popular pressure, there was a change in our administration in 2018. Now, when the new administration took office, it took several measures aimed at widening the democratic space, trying to bolster civil liberties and improve upon our human rights situation. Some of these measures were administrative measures. For example, several websites, news outlets that were blocked and that were not accessible in Ethiopia were made accessible. Many individuals were blocked from entering the country or leaving the country, were allowed to freely come to the country or leave the country as they please. And many outlawed political groups, some of them based in neighboring countries, some of them based abroad, many of whom were designated as terrorist organizations, were allowed to return to Ethiopia, to renounce violence and engage in lawful, peaceful political activity. And several organizations, more than 10 organizations, responded positively to this call to return to the country and engage in peaceful political process and dialogue. In addition to these measures, more than 45,000 citizens were made beneficiaries of an amnesty proclamation and a pardon scheme. And these individuals were allowed to reintegrate with the community and resume their life. Through these administrative measures and also additional legislative and institutional reform measures that were taken, such as the reform of our civil society law, our media law, our electoral laws, the laws pertaining to the elections and political parties, we have been able to expand the democratic space and ensure a transition to a more democratic dispensation. In addition to these legislative measures, some of the institutional reform measures that were taken, such as reestablishing the National Electoral Board, reestablishing the National Electoral, reestablishing the Human Rights Commission, has enabled us to have more autonomous, more independent and capable democratic institutions. It's also important to point out that these measures were taken in a manner that was inclusive, that was participatory, through a process that allowed civil society, academia, and opposition political parties to have a say and to have an input. Furthermore, an all-parties dialogue platform was established under the auspices of the newly established National Electoral Board, allowing all political parties to have sustained continued dialogue on matters of national importance. There are also several other civic initiatives that try to facilitate national dialogue, such as the initiative pioneered by an indigenous civil society organization called Destiny Ethiopia, which is notable for bringing together various political actors and players. Now, having said this, as far as the context and background is concerned, a question that would arise would be, if such measures of reform were taken, then why are we facing the problems and challenges we're facing? Why was there a conflict? Now, let me address this question. I'll say that even where you have the best of intentions, transitions are never easy and smooth, particularly in a country like Ethiopia, where there is huge youth unemployment, where you have a population that is estimated to be more than 100 million, most of the population, more than 2/3 being youth, and there being a serious youth unemployment problem. Furthermore, a situation where you have ethnic division and animosity that has been fanned and exacerbated in the past 27 years, it is to be expected that any democratic transition would face serious challenges. One of the challenges, I'm not saying that this was the only challenge, but one of the challenges we faced was the fact that there were determined spoilers who were intent on derailing the transition process, were determined to make the country ungovernable and intent on destabilizing the country. Many of these actors have their own motivations, their own incentives, their own calculations. One of the most prominent spoilers, I would say, was the TPLF. It was not the only spoiler, but one of the spoilers was the TPLF, particularly hardliners within the TPLF could not accept a diminished role and status within a reformed Ethiopia. They wanted to maintain the economic and political hegemony they enjoyed before the reforms. So they refused calls for dialogue. They refused for peaceful political processes and engagement. Although TPLF was part of the government until even after the new administration came into power, the hardliners within the TPLF wanted to resort to the use of force and return to the status quo before the reform. The federal government tried to follow a strategy of containment. It tried to diffuse tensions. It tried to de-escalate the conflict. But because there were determined spoilers within the TPLF, particularly the hardliners, they resorted to the use of force. They attacked the National Defense Force. And by doing so, they violated the constitution and other fundamental laws of the land. And these attacks posed an existential threat to our national security and our existence as a nation, and also as a sovereign country, and also for our territorial integrity. So this leads me to the third part of my remarks, which is what is the appropriate response to this kind of provocation, to this kind of belligerent and illegal, manifestly illegal action on the part of a political party that was supposed to administer a regional state. Obviously, the appropriate response for this kind of provocation, for this kind of belligerent and illegal action cannot be appeasement. We have tried containment. Containment didn't work. appeasement definitely would have only made matters worse. So the federal government was forced to use force to undertake a military operation to restore lawful authority. And this was done within the framework of a state of emergency proclaimed according to the Constitution, and also a federal intervention sanctioned and authorized and ordered by the House of Federation, which is the guardian of the constitutional order. This was not our preferred option. This was not our choice, but we were forced to resort to this option and adopt a state of emergency and use armed force to restore lawful authority. Now, obviously, when you institute a state of emergency and when you engage in this kind of operation, naturally there will be fallouts, there would be challenges, complications, and various incidents. And we're trying to respond to these issues, this challenge. My colleagues from the National Disaster and Risk Management Commission and the Refugees and Returnees Agency will also address some of these issues. But I would just like to reiterate that the measures we took were fully constitutional and authorized by the House of People's Representatives and the House of Federation, which have the constitutional mandate to sanction these kind of measures, including state of emergency and federal intervention. As far as complications that arise out of these measures are concerned, we are trying to deal with them as they arise. Now, having said this, I would also like to reiterate the fact that while this operation has been going on, we have not given up on our reform efforts. We are still undertaking the reform measures we have started to take in 2018. As recently as last month, we have adopted the new media law proclamation, which is part of the reform package. We are expected to have an election in the summer of 2021. The campaign season is already underway. Political parties are registering their candidates, and they have already started unveiling their manifestos, and the election is underway. We expect the election to be the culmination of the various democratic and human rights reform measures we have been taking in the past 2 years. We understand that there have been many ups and downs, serious challenge in the process of trying to take Ethiopia in a more democratic direction. Despite the spoilers, despite the naysayers, we are committed to continuing these reform initiatives. We expect that the election would provide further impetus and boost for these reform processes, and that there will be additional, more in-depth dialogues with all political parties, with all political actors that are operating in the country lawfully and peacefully, and that this dialogue would lead to further, it would help us enhance national consensus and would also lead to national reconciliation. So that is it from my side. And as far as other issues are concerned, some of it would be addressed by my colleagues. And if there are other issues, I would be happy to address those during the Q&A. Thank you, Madam Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gideon, and for being on time as well. You have just done it in 21 minutes. So I appreciate that. So in the interest of time, I will directly invite His Excellency Ato Mutuku Kasa, Commissioner for National Disaster Risk Management Commission. The floor is yours, Automatico. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ambassador and organizers of this panel meeting. I am so grateful for inviting me to address and brief on humanitarian situation regarding Ethiopia in general and Tigray Regional State in particular. So as you well know, Ethiopia, because of it, Isamal?
Isamal, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Ethiopia, because of its geographic location, as the Horn of Africa is vulnerable to a number of natural disasters, and because of improper handling of its diversity in terms of nations, nationalities, and religious parties, it is vulnerable to human-induced disasters, such as conflict and displacement. So the government of Ethiopia and its partners have been responding for humanitarian assistance since 1974, over the last 46 years, to save the lives of the people and saving the livelihood of drought and other human-induced hazards and associated disasters. So we believe that we continue for coming years and the future, unless we will not be able to control and suppress the adverse effect of climate change and other hazardous natural disasters that are related to improper handling of diversity. Having said this, I proceed to Tigray Regional State context. My presentation will focus on 4 parts. The first one is humanitarian access in Tigray Regional State. The second one, the coordination mechanism. The third part is humanitarian assistance, and the fourth part is recovery and peace building. So I will begin with humanitarian access. It is a very important issue. It has been said time and again by a number of partners at a local level as well as at international level, so that I will make it so clear for the participants how we are handling humanitarian access. So as an agreement for enhanced coordination mechanism for humanitarian access in Tigray region, border areas of Amara and Afar, as we do have a spillover effect of the law enforcement operation in Tigray, was signed between the government of Ethiopia and the United Nations on November 29, 2020, which aim to boost prospects for safe, effective, and efficient delivery of humanitarian assistance to needy people in Tigray and border areas of Amara and Afar regional states. Based on this agreement, the Ministry of Peace, representing the government of Ethiopia, and UN resident and humanitarian coordinator, representing the partners which are working in Ethiopia, had a fruitful discussion on how to facilitate access through providing clearance letter to let free movement of humanitarian and development partners to border areas of Amara and Afar regional states. So this clearance letter is based on the agreement, as I mentioned earlier, signed between the Ethiopian government and its partners. As per the agreement between the Ministry of Peace and resident and humanitarian coordinator of UN agencies, bilaterals, and international NGOs, which reach agreement with the Ethiopian government, have been able to collect clearance letter and travel to above mentioned regions without any hurdle. So as of yesterday, we have been able to provide for 135 partners, including 11 international media members to travel to Tigray and observe whatever they want, to have information on food, and non-food supply across the regional state, which is distributed by the Government of Ethiopia, as well as CRS by REST, representing the partners. In addition, there are more than 29 international NGOs currently, which are collected clearance letter from the federal government and who stationed at Mekelle and moving in Tigray Regional State to distribute non-food commodities to the needy ones across the regional state. To mention some of the partners who have collected the clearance letter and are currently working at Tigray: IOM, UNICEF, UNHCR, WFP, World Vision, Danish Refugee Council, Embassy of Holland, Embassy of Spain, Save the Children, UNOCHA, Concern, RADO, IRC, NRC. These are the few of the partners which are working with the government in Tigray Regional State. So that's the provision of clearance letter will continue as long as we do have duties and having a volume of work to address the needy ones in terms of food and non-food commodities. In addition, in few cases, military escorting has been taken as a last resort for the safety and security of partners in areas where remnants of TPLF force ambushing and open sporadic fire. The intention is simply for the safety of the partners, security of the partners, as well as to create a conducive environment for the movement of trucks which are loaded with food and non-food commodities. There are so many. There are few pocket areas that need military escorting. To this end, we do have military, the Defense Force staff member as the Emergency Coordination Center at Mekelle, and the Incident Command Post in Shire. These are the way that we are handling humanitarian access. When I move to the coordination mechanism, we do have a standard coordination mechanism. As you may know, there are a cluster-based coordination mechanism for humanitarian partners. In this cluster approach, we do have 10 clusters, namely agriculture and livestock, water and sanitation, health, nutrition, food, logistics, NFI and shelter, children and women protection, education and site management. Each cluster does have their own coaches, FAO, UNICEF, WHO, WFP, IOM, UNHCR, respectively. These are the coaches who chairs each cluster with respective line ministries, such as Ministry of Agriculture, Health, Water, Energy, Irrigation, the Commission and Ministry of Women, Children and Youth. Each cluster includes line ministries, UN agencies, bilaterals, and international NGOs based on their area of intervention. And to have, as I mentioned earlier, their coaches. Key members of each cluster are represented in Emergency Coordination Center. We established, as I mentioned earlier, the Emergency Coordination Center at Mekelle. This Emergency Coordination Center comprises all UN agencies, bilaterals, international NGOs, government line ministries, bureaus of interim government of Tigray, to speed up, to facilitate the distribution and the distribution of food and non-food commodities to the needy ones across Tigray Regional State. So to speed up, and again, we established emergency command post, incident command post at Shire, because at Shire we do have a number of IDPs as well as needy people, relief beneficiaries, as well as safety net beneficiaries, so that in order to address these people efficiently and effectively, the incident command post, the ICP, which is established at Shire, now has been playing its part. So that we have a plan to establish additional more ICPs in Aksum, Adwa, Adigrat, and Alamata. This helps us to deepen the distribution of food and non-food commodities to the needy people, as I mentioned earlier, in the region. When I proceed to the third part, humanitarian assistance, since the law enforcement operation completed, we have had around 1.8 million existing relief and safety net beneficiaries. So as soon as the law enforcement operation completed, we have deployed 3 multi-agency teams in a number of directions. So these 3 teams came up with additional figure, around 700,000 additional figure to be added on the existing 1.8 million. So that we have been working on 2.5 million beneficiaries. There was one case from the regional government. 4.5 million beneficiaries were circulated or floated to the international community and to a number of partners which are working at the regional level. So these 4.5 million beneficiaries had its own assumption. That time, bank services was already interrupted because of the interruption of electric power and telecom lines. Second, most of the civil servants were not able to collect their salary as the bank and other facilities were interrupted. The third one, there was market failure due to looting, deliberate looting of the commodities by the TPLF force, as well as desert locust infestation and other factors, early cessation of summer rain from most parts of the Tigray region. So that the assumption now has declined because banks are functional in most areas. Salaries were paid to a number of civil servants. Third, market failures have been addressed through provision of basic commodities through the Ministry of Trade and Industry and the Ethiopian Cooperative Agency to most parts of, especially in urban areas of Tigray. So now we are working between 4.5 and 2.5. As of yesterday, we are able to reach 3.5 billion beneficiaries. This shows that, as we put earlier, the Ethiopian government is committed to capture and respond to any need, wherever. As the direction which was put by the government of Ethiopia, now we address 3.5 million beneficiaries. We continue for the second round by correcting the gaps and shortfalls based on concrete assessment by deploying the multi-agency team to a number of areas. This regarding the humanitarian assistance. Second, women and children, elders have been given due attention so that we are able to provide CSCB, nutrition, food, and emergency medicines. Even in most cases, we have been using air transport from Addis Ababa, from Bishoftu, and from Adama to Shire and Mekelle to speed up the supply of medicines and other nutritious food to the beneficiaries in the regional state. These are the areas that we have been working on humanitarian assistance. The last part, the recovery and peace building. It is very important. Now, at the EC level, we have tried to transcend humanitarian response and recovery and rehabilitation activities because humanitarian assistance is based on saving lives. Most of economic and social structures have deliberately damaged by the TPLF force. It needs huge investment. To this end, we have established a technical team by the Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Peace, having World Bank and UNDP from the partners to work on loss and damage, the PDNA, post-need assessment, and the team is expected to come up with the loss and damage data and the cost that needs to repair or to rebuild the damaged economic and social infrastructures. So that now we are focusing on both sides, on the humanitarian assistance, as well as the peace building and recovery. Peace building is a basic. There are so many gaps that need to be filled by the partners as well as the government. So in peace building initiative, the Ministry of Peace has taken its own lead, so that to address the overall challenges in Tigray, we are using the triple nexus approach: humanitarian, development, and peace nexus. These are the points that I want to raise for now. So I am ready to receive any questions, any comments. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mutiko, again for being timely and for a wonderful presentation. I will now invite our last but not least speaker, Mr. Tesfahun Gobezai, Director General of Agency for Refugees and Returnees Affairs. Mr. Tesfahun, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Ambassador. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad that I joined this very important platform to present the current status of our agency. I will focus on the refugee operation in Ethiopia, and in particular, the Eritrean refugees in Tigray. As you might know, Ethiopia is well known for welcoming and sheltering refugees, and this is well entrenched in our history. It can go as far as the first hijrah of the Muslim followers who came to Ethiopia to seek asylum, and where they were granted by the Christian king. And this is continuing throughout our history, and we have one proud experience in sheltering and giving protection for those who are in need of it. In light with this, we have one of the most progressive proclamations in the world with regard to refugees, which gives a lot of privileges to refugees, and they can easily integrate with the community. They have the right to get access to work. They have the right to get education, even including tertiary education. And we have more than 1,500 refugees who are learning in our the tertiary education institutions. We have also one of the best policies with regard to giving the service inclusion to refugees, and we also have vital events registration for refugees who are born in Ethiopia in the refugee camps or in the towns. So we have a lot of good experience and a good practice in regard to refugees. Currently, we have around 1 million refugees in 26 camps around the country. They came mainly from our neighbors, Sudan, South Sudan, Eritrea, and Somalia, but in small numbers also from other countries, which are around 26 in total. With regard to Eritrean refugees, we have around 200,000 Eritrean refugees in Ethiopia. From this, more than 100,000 of them live in Afar region and in Addis Ababa city, while the remaining 92,000 refugees live in Tigray. From the 92 refugees that live in Tigray, also the 49,000 live in camps, and the others live in different towns of Tigray. So when we talk about the issue of Eritrean refugees, we are referring about the 49,000 that were living in 4 camps. And from the 4 camps, Ma'aini and Adi Harush, the 2,000 camps were intact. So there was no damage on the refugees or on the refugee operation. There was no significant delay in resuming services in these 2 camps. So there was no much problem with them. The other 2 camps, Hizaz and Shimalba, were sheltering 19,200 refugees at the time of the start of law enforcement operation. So they comprise almost 1.3% of the whole refugee operation in the country. But these 2 camps and the 19,000 Eritrean refugees issues is surfacing the country's overall thrive in making itself avail for the service of those who are in need, or for the refugees who are needing the service and protection from our country. Eritrean refugee camps, as I said, there are 4 Eritrean refugee camps in Tigray. The other 2 are in Afar region. So I will focus on those who are in Tigray region. The camps are Hizaz, Shimelba, Maikadra, and Adi Harush, and they have different population sizes. To just give you the numbers, Shimelba has 8,500 refugees on October 2020, while Hizaz has 11,800, and Maikadra 15,000. 13,800, and Adi Harush 15,000 refugees. When the law enforcement operation started, the whole operation of the refugee camps operation was stopped. Our staff have fled their posts, and some of our staffs who were from the central part of the country were imprisoned in the different towns of Tigray. So the whole operation was halted, and there was no service delivery to the refugees. It made most of the refugees to panic, and they were wondering as to how they can respond, or how they can continue with their life in the camps. So what we did is we assessed the situation, and first we rescued our staffs who were in prison. Second, we assessed the situation and gave priority to the 2 southern camps. First, because they have more than 65% of the in-camp population, and secondly, because they are intact and we are able to reach them without further delay. So we continued delivering service to the 2 camps, while we also continue collecting those who are scattered from the 2 camps. Our current assessment about Hizaz and Shimelba shows that there were some fightings around the camps between the TPLF militia and the law enforcement forces. And the TPLF militia has deliberately attacked these 2 camps to make the scene and to create media havoc so that we would be under pressure. And this has led for the panic of the refugees, and they left the camps early. So when they were scattered around the camps, the military, Ethiopian Defense Force, was able to escort them to the nearest towns of Shiraro, Adi Hagarai, Badime, and others, so that they are scattered in the different towns of Tigray. So we were collecting them and relocating them to the 2 safest camps. So far, we have been able to relocate 6,000 refugees from the Hizaz and Shimelba to Maikadra and Adi Harush, while more than 5,000, we believe, and UNHCR also believes so, more than 5,000 refugees are in Addis Ababa. This makes a total of 11,200, 11,000 of the 19,200 affected refugees. And then we have an estimate that around 1,500 are in Mekelle, around 3,500 are in different towns of Amhara, and the remaining 2,200 are dispersed in western parts of Tigray. In areas where we are not able to transport them to the safest camps, we are using the help from my good friend Metuku Kasa, the National Disaster and Risk Management Commission, so that they can get the necessary help wherever they are. So when NDRMC is distributing food, it will also include Eritrean refugees wherever they are, so that they can sustain until we can go there and are able to move them to the safest camps. With regard to the 2 safest camps, they are able to continue their usual service. So far, we have been able to maintain water, we have been able to maintain health service, and we are also working hard to make sure that education is started accordingly. With the help from UNHCR and other partners, we are also able to build temporary shelters for the refugees, for those who are coming from Hizaz and Shimelba. Currently, we are also needing a lot of help from our partners in order to be able to provide the necessary services that the refugees seek. Of course, it is making a lot of media attention, and it's creating a lot of criticisms, but when it comes to real help and when it comes to material assistance to those who are in need, we are seeing some lags and some not coming up as it should have been. The other issue I want to raise is about the two camps that are problematic. That means Hizaz and Shmelba. We were planning to consolidate or to close these two camps for different reasons and in different times. For example, Shmelba is only 20 kilometers away from the border with Eritrea, with the border, and it is a standard that a refugee camp should be at least 50 kilometers away from a border, and especially when the border is contested, it should be as far as possible. But this is found in 20 kilometers from the border, and it was not up to the standard even to start with. So the problem was that this camp was established in a wrong place. So the government was planning to relocate this camp to another place, and there were a lot of tries, but it was not successful. The second camp, the Hizaz, is established last from the four camps. It is the newest camp from the four camps, and is found deep inside a desert, the Dadabit Desert, which is found in western Tigray, and there is no enough water, there is no enough service, and also it's prone to malaria and other diseases. It also has some conflicts with regard to resource utilization, because adjacent to the camp is found a traditional gold mining center. So there were a lot of issues already with regard to this camp, and the government decided to relocate this camp before 2 years, and we had tried a lot of efforts to finalize it. For example, we have given more than 12,000 refugees out of camp status, which means they can live in towns, and we have also started constructing temporary shelters in the southern camps. But it was also halted by the sabotage of the TPLF, and we were not able to finalize what we started. So the law enforcement operation came in this context. So the places were problematic even from the start, and they proved to be problematic even after the start of the operation. The operation has only made it clear that our stand of closing these two camps or relocating these two camps was right, and those who opposed us had a malice intent or had not understood our side. So what we are doing now is to continue what we had started and what was stopped by the sabotaging of TPLF. Now we are able to convince UNHCR, which is our partner in this operation, and we have also convinced other partners, and they are with us in relocating the camps, and we are working a lot in finishing the relocation process in a short time as possible. This is the issue with Eritrean refugees. The other issue I want to raise is about our citizens in Sudan. Since returnees is also our mandate, we also give attention to Ethiopian citizens in Sudan who are seeking refuge in Sudanese camps. We understand that there are around 60,000 Eritrean refugees, Ethiopians in Sudan, and this is much less than what the world was expecting, what Sudanese authorities and UNHCR was expecting, and it is good that it is smaller than that was feared. We believe that most of these 60,000 Ethiopians are innocent, and they just go to Sudan to seek protection, and because of fear of violence or fear of conflict and fear of collateral damage. And we believe that they want to come back to their homes. The UNHCR has also proved that, and the High Commissioner said some of the refugees even want to go back to their homes and collect or harvest their seedlings, which are not collected from the farms. So we are working with UNHCR in Ethiopia, UNHCR in Sudan, and our embassy in Sudan to make sure that their return happens in a shorter period of time and in a very voluntary, safe and secure manner. But there are also some elements in this who are from some of the issues that are raised from, for example, in the western part of Tigray. There was an incident, as you know, that happened in Maikadra, where there was an atrocious mass killing of citizens, and more than 1,000 Ethiopians have lost their lives in an attempt of genocide. So there are some who have participated in such atrocious crimes, and we don't believe that their seeking of refuge would evoke them from the responsibility that they should carry. So we are working with the National Intelligence and Security Service to make sure that those who are returning are those who are innocent, and anyone who has committed a crime or who is believed to have committed a crime would go through the necessary judicial procedure, so that he would be or she would be asked for their deeds. This is what I have as a presentation. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you, Madam Ambassador.
Thank you very much. I would like to appreciate from the bottom of my heart the three panelists for being very timely. Ato Tesfaun also just took 1 or 2 minutes above what he was supposed to say. So I really appreciate this, because it will give us enough time for comments and questions. So I would like to quickly summarize, so that this was a very diverse topic that was covered within less than an hour or an hour. I will start out with what Dr. Gideon said. He briefly took us to the how the reform process began, and then he took us to the point where in November the lead up to the law and order operation approach. Then he also noted very important points on how through this process the Ethiopian government is trying to ascertain human rights and investigate alleged atrocities. And overall, he has also taken us to the reform process that is mainly focused on the upcoming election in June, and then also the political dialogue process that is ongoing. We thank him for that. And Mr. Matiku has given us a very good highlight about how the humanitarian delivery structure is working. He has told us that out of 6 million people, about 3.5 million people have been reached out. And he has clearly noted that not everyone is a regular humanitarian assistance in humanitarian assistance envelope, but due to the various issues of market failures, salary issues, and the likes, that this number has hiked and has gone down. But the government is doing what they can to reach out. He has. I will be corrected by him, but it caught my thoughts about what he said with regards to triple nexus approach. I think he raised about the humanitarian situation, peace, and development. If I have taken it out of place, he will correct me.
You are right. You are right, Ambassador.
And finally, we also appreciate Mr. Tasfahun for giving us a highlight of what the Ethiopian, refugee situation is, and how historically Ethiopia has been a very reasonable refuge for anyone that is in trouble, and has taken us through the overall policy level, refugee policy level approach in Ethiopia. But particularly has taken us where now everyone is focusing on the 4 camps that exist in the Tigray region, and the scenarios overall. And it was not remiss of him not to forget our compatriots in the Sudan and the process of repatriation as well. So I thank them all, because we have sufficient time as I see it. Those of us, especially that I see you on the screen, we can have a 1-minute stretch out, and then we'll come back for the Q&A. So those of you who would like to stretch, have some, something to drink, to grab a drink, you are free for 1 minute. Thank you very much. So we'll come back at 3:03 again. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. We are in session again. So now the floor is open for questions, comments. Please either flag through the screen or wave, and then we'll follow you. Thank you very much. Okay. I see Mr. Vincent Chadwick. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for organising this session. I'm a journalist in Brussels working for a publication called DevEx. My journalistic colleagues and I were at a briefing from Mr. Havitso, the Finnish foreign minister, earlier this week in Brussels. And you may have seen the outcome of what he told us, which is that in his view, the government of Ethiopia is in denial about what is happening in Tigray. So I wanted to get your response to his comments. And I suppose on this question of European development assistance and the postponement of budget support payments, the EU has established some conditions for the restarting of those payments, or the unfreezing or the unpostponing. I'm not sure what the appropriate term is, but their conditions include granting full humanitarian access, allowing civilians to seek refuge in neighboring countries, the end of ethnically targeted measures, mechanisms to monitor human rights, and full communication and media access. From what you've just said, it seems like you are already making efforts in those directions and, in your view, doing what's possible. So my question is how those two positions will be reconciled, where the EU says this isn't happening and therefore the budget support is postponed, and based on what you've just said, efforts are underway. So as long as you are saying that this is happening and they're saying it's not happening, it seems that budget support is not happening, but it's at a time when the EU is reflecting on its development assistance for the next 7 years. And I understand that perhaps 100 million euros might not be very much money, or 80 million euros, but €1 billion for 7 years is a significant sum, I think. So I'd like to understand more about how this process is working. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chadwick. I have seen the article and we have responded to that. You will receive later to the article, later to the editor today. But we'll also invite the panelists to react to that. Let's add 1 or 2 questions so that we can invite the panelists to respond to. Okay, then till other questions would be posed, let me open the floor for response for the first question from Devex. Thank you.
I could take a stab at the first question by Mr. Chadwick. So first of all, I mean, I don't want to provide an extensive commentary on the statement by the Finnish Minister of Foreign Affairs, but I would simply say that a government that is in denial wouldn't provide humanitarian assistance and support for 3.5 million people. the fact that so many of our citizens were in need of support, have received support, is a clear indication of the fact that the government is tackling the situation on the ground and is fully cognizant of the situation. So I think the facts speak for themselves. As far as the freezing or unfreezing of budgetary support is concerned, we're doing whatever we're doing not to fulfill certain preconditions set by certain parties, but primarily because we believe in the need to provide humanitarian assistance for those who are in need. We believe that is our responsibility, our duty, and the same as far as the other matters are concerned. So this is all that I would like to say on this matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gideon. Would any of the panelists okay, Atomitiku, please. Please go ahead.
Thank you much. Thank you very much, Madam Ambassador. I think regarding human access, it has been said time and again. So partners who had the opportunity to visit Addis Ababa, frequent traveled to Tigray, Shire, Adwa, Aksum, and Adigrat. For instance, UNOCHA, IOM, UNICEF, USAID, even last week, US Embassy and USAID higher officials had been to Tigray and discussed thoroughly with the GAPS, with the interim government of Tigray and the technical staff as an emergency coordination center. Now, as I mentioned earlier, 29 international NGOs
Atomitiku is in the field outside Addis in Walaita. Somebody that knows Walaita, he's there. He's doing his best to be part of this panel. So let's wait for him for a while. If he cannot make it back, then we'll give a chance to maybe if Ato Tesfaun has something to say. Not every panelist has to respond on this. I can also. I'll have a view as well. Okay, till we get Mr. Mitiku, let's go to Mr. Tesfaun. Please go ahead, Mr. Tesfaun.
Okay, thank you, Madam Ambassador. I have seen one question from the comment section and I want to address that actually. So it says it's about the food distribution in the refugee camps, and the comment, the one who wrote the comment says that the distribution was late and it was against the recommendation of the WFP and the UNHCR. I just want to comment on that. For the refugee camps, there was food distribution on October for 2 months, which means for October and for November. So we're expected to distribute the next round on December. And usually it happens around up to the mid of the month for a new distribution. And we managed to distribute food around 17, 18 of December. And we are really in no significant delay from the usual period. So the 2 camps, we have resumed service without significant delay, and the WFP also has commended us for that. And we used a new route, we used a new tactic, and that was fruitful, and that was also in appreciation from the WFP. So I just want to comment on that.
Thank you very much. I will quickly react to, I think it's more of a diplomatic question that was raised about by DEVEX, Mr. Vincent. By coincidence, we were sending you and Euro Observer letter to the editor about your interview with the Foreign Minister of Finland and the special, and who went to Ethiopia as a special representative for the High Representative of the European Union. We were taken by surprise with the very, very stark gap that was presented by His Excellency the Foreign Minister of Finland. We had begged the delegation before they go, because delegation from the European Union was part of that as well, to go and visit outside of Addis. We were told that they were not ready because they have a very tight schedule of 2 days alone. They are going to go to the Sudan, so no enough time to go and get into the field. While the gentleman had not taken the chance to see for himself and go down and see the situation, I was completely taken by surprise, and all of us, that he came out with this ridiculous view of even daring to say that our territory is not in control within our own means. So this was absurd. This was out of line. And I will be meeting the ambassador of Finland tomorrow, and this is the reaction that I will send to her. We have received the foreign minister in good faith. We have discussed with him and allowed him the access of my president, my prime minister, my deputy prime minister, the minister of peace. There were elaborate discussions, and I don't know where things went wrong, and has taken him to give this kind of absurd interview to these two. And I suspect this was not only given to the newspapers, but probably might have been reported to the European Union Foreign Affairs Council. So what to do with the discrepancies? We'll say our own lines, and then the foreign minister will continue to say his own line. This is what I had to say on this. We see a question, another question on the screen. This might go for anyone interested. It says, how would you react to the stolen food aid from northern Adigrat? It doesn't have any details, but it just says that way. And there is another question that says, could you explain to us which waradas and how many people at each warada are provided aid for? Are those figures available? Maybe Atomitiku if you could start on that. Atomitiku, are you with us? Unfortunately, I think we have missed Atomitiku. We can quote him back on what he said till he comes back. Let me try to respond to this question, and also maybe the panelists will also add to that. We have said already there are 92 distribution centers in a region of 6 million population. Imagine, Ethiopia is a 100 million plus population country. So in one region alone, which is not a majority in number, 92 distribution centers are already created. And in no time, the number of distribution is increasing day by day. On Monday, we had reached about 3.1 million people out of the 6 million population. Forget that targets put by the assessments. And today, we have a new report that shows 3.5 million people have been addressed. So it's a simple logic on how this the aid is being distributed around the region. So I think this will definitely, Mekelle, what is the population of Mekelle? It's 500,000. So the rest of it is definitely going out of the city. This is not a very difficult logic to understand. And through how Mr. Mutiku explained the distribution centers, the expansion, the available food for the coming few months, this will definitely give us a reassurance on the fact that various parts of the region are receiving this assistance. Unfortunately, I will not be able to address the second point. I don't know whether through connections, if distinguished panelists, would you like to react on this issue itself, and then maybe food stolen from northern Adigrat? We can address this question even by email. If the person that raised this question leaves us his email, we can come back to him.
Madam, I have
Mr. Tasfaun, please.
I have called Mithoko and he's trying to reconnect. And
Okay.
I have informed him about the questions and he will come back to them. If not, I will call him and I will receive the message and I will translate it.
Thank you very much. We appreciate this. Any more comments? I see Mr. Gabayao. Mr. Gabayao, please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think Mr. Mituku is not here, but I will just forward my question, and I have also another question to Dr. Gideon. So, as it's mentioned, not only Mr. Havisto has said that you know, the distribution is not going good, but Mr. Borrell also has said that 80% of the population in Tigray are unreachable. So there is a huge gap, I think, here. How could this much gap is created? I mean, this requires really clarification because Mr. Borrell was really convinced. It should be based on the report from Mr. Havisto, of course, but then the council was also convinced, and we don't know what actions they are going to take, but Mr. Borrell was saying that 80% of the population are unreachable. And then I just to get clarification from Mr. Mituku and the team, because I have heard also that there are 92 distribution stations, but apparently Mr. Borrell and the rest were saying that. And the second question is to Dr. Gideon. I know Dr. Gideon has come from the academia, but you know, the previous government has used the justice system to legalize its illegal actions, and some of the people even from here were victims of that system. How much is now your office independent and free to do its job? Thank you.
Let's try to address this point, and or I see one more person. I see Ambassador Hino. The comment or question, Ambassador Hino?
Thank you. No, I just wanted to comment on the previous topic regarding aid suspension by the EU. I think it's very important to go back and see why the EU Commission. It's not the EU, it's the EU Commission, because member states, some of them did not agree to it. I went ahead with this. The justification was that there was not enough humanitarian access. That's the official justification. Thereafter, we have seen the situation change dramatically. And you don't need to believe the Ethiopian government for this. You just have to look at the humanitarian workers on the ground, the international humanitarian workers on the ground that are there in Tigray, and principally the World Food Program. They are there doing the real work. And you would see that the chief of the WFP was there in Ethiopia, and he's now back in Ethiopia. And he has clearly indicated, and he's in Tigray, by the way, that there is important progress on the ground in terms of delivery of humanitarian assistance. So unless we want to politicize humanitarian assistance, there is really no need to have any concern about access anymore. So that issue should not be an issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Hinok, for really reminding me that very important question that was posed, and thank you for the right response. I completely agree with what you have mentioned. So let's try to respond to Mr. Gabea. He has two questions. The first one is, Havisto, and then after that, the High Representative have mentioned that 80% of Tigray is not accessible. And then also, it looks like the council, what the council is going to have as a conclusion. I think what the council have to go as a conclusion, there would be none other than the embassy to respond to that, I'm sure. So I wouldn't want to put this to our panelists because it's a very technical issue and happening as we speak every day here. So I will just tackle on that quickly. When Ambassador Henok was saying that the Commission and the European Union members could be different, that is very true, because the Council conclusion means the agreement based on consensus of all the 27 member countries. Doesn't mean that the High Representative's Office or the External Service Action alone. So there will be a draft that will be circulated with regards to how the European Union would be viewing the situation in Ethiopia. And we expect about mid-March, a conclusion will be coming out from the European Union Council, of course, Foreign Relations Council. And that will definitely be a consensus point that has to be argued and debated by all member countries. So having said this, I think the 80% issue, it's a national issue. Everyone is surprised with that figure, but I think I would like to give the floor first to the panelists. Thank you.
All right, so let me tackle the questions, some of the questions by Mr. Gabel. Now, it so happens that the genesis of the 80% figure is well known in Addis. Initially, this was a figure reported by, if I'm not mistaken, by Reuters or the AFP, quoting the head of the Ethiopian Red Cross Society. However, immediately after this, this report was released by this news outlet, the Ethiopian Red Cross Authority, the Ethiopian Red Cross Society has released a statement indicating that their Secretary General was obviously misquoted, that his statement was at the very least misquoted, and they have indicated that what they had said was that that specific organization had only 20% capacity to address the needs in Tigray. So they have issued a statement clarifying that the reporting was not true. But despite this clear statement from the Ethiopian Red Cross Society indicating that these reports were not accurate, that they are deliberately misleading and misquoting their statement, the news outlets have not corrected it. And it's unfortunate that some of our international partners are also echoing this statement that has been clearly debunked. Now, having said that about the 80% remark, as far as the autonomy and the operation of this, the Office of the Prosecutor is concerned, I would say that we are in a process of reform. So, you know, I can't say that the institution has made a 180-degree shift and everything is everything has been transformed. Reform takes time. It requires hard work, and we're trying to put in the effort and the hard work required to reform not only these institutions but also other critical institutions. And there has been much progress in enhancing professionalism, in enhancing prosecutorial autonomy, and prosecutorial autonomy has also been reinforced by judicial independence. Everyone knows the kind of leadership that has been installed in the Supreme Court, not only the Chief Justice, but other leaders in the judicial sector. So there is check and balance. There are mechanisms to ensure that we are operating based on the law and the facts. So I would say that compared to the situation we had prior to 2018, things are definitely much better. They have been improved, and this process of improving and reforming our institutions will be sustained, will continue to work on it. And there are many practical testaments to the kind of job we are doing. So it's not a finished product, but it's a work in progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gideon. I know you are rushing. You have only few minutes. Would you be able to push a little few minutes, or shall we? Good. Thank you very much. In that case, we will invite Mr. Mituku. Welcome back. Yeah. Shall I repeat the question for you, or?
I think some of the questions were addressed by Atofantown and Doctor, so I captured a few of the questions.
Tesfaun, you mean? Okay.
Tesfaun, yeah. So that I will respond for the questions. Yes. So the 80%, as rightly said by Dr. Gideon, it was floated by the head of the Red Cross, President of Ethiopia. He was referring resource access, because the Ethiopian Red Cross is one of the partners which is working on the food and non-food area with its own intervention waradas. So the head of the Ethiopian Red Cross Society was referring resource access to address the needy ones in their areas of intervention. It has nothing to do with geographic access. So, for information, now we have been able to reach very difficult areas like Rama, Hausen, Europe, Tambe. These are the most difficult areas which were occupied by the remnant of TPLF force. Now are free. In few areas we are using military escort. So 80% is referring to resource access. It is not geographic one. We are not working only on the streets, on urban areas. We are able to penetrate rural areas. So I can provide organized information through our embassy in Brussels. These are one of the case. So it 100% taken from the information which were disclosed by the head of the Ethiopian Red Cross Society. It does not reflect the reality on the ground. Seeing is believing. So that whoever wants to check what is going on the ground can check through the NGOs which are working with the Ethiopian government in most parts of the Tigray region. This is my response regarding the 80%. Second, of course, looting was happened. Deliberate looting in Shire area, 820 quintals of wheat, which was transported by West. Now the driver and the one who loot the wheat, now they are in front of, they are at custody. Now we are ready to bring them to justice. And now the committee is so alerted to keep and say words on their rights to have emergency assistance in a standard manner, in a timely manner, so that we organized a community committee comprising of youth, women, elders, and others who are overseeing, monitoring the distribution of the food and non-food commodities in each food distribution point. So now we have tried to disclose these looting incidents by media to teach the others to keep their hands from such activities. Third, regarding the breakdown of the beneficiaries, we can avail it. We can avail through the embassy. I will work with my team. We organize and we will send to the embassy. Then the embassy will circulate to anyone who are interested to have a look on the delivery of the food and food in most parts of the area. Now, our main concern is to check the first round distribution. Now, our plan is to fill those gaps while we were distributing the food as a first round for 3.5 million people. As we are able to deliver for 3.5 million beneficiaries. If you take urban areas, the Tigray, the projected figure, population is 6 million. 3.5 million is half of the population of Tigray. So most of whom are living in urban areas. That means we are not distributing the food in urban area. We are able to penetrate rural areas as well. There is evidence. Regarding access, now as I mentioned earlier, we have provided 175 clearance letters to the partners, some of whom are traveling frequently from Addis to Mekelle, and even they are able to move freely in a number of areas like Aksum, Adwa. You can check from IM, UNICEF, Save the Children, World Vision, IRC. These are the main partners which are closely working with the Ethiopian government. So that these are the main questions as I received from this one. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you very much. I appreciate this, Mr. Mitiku. There are two more interventions requested. The first one is Mr. Abara. Let me just call you consecutively and then you'll take the floor. We'll take all of them together. Mr. Abara is the first person that wanted to take the floor. Then from Crisis Group, Mr. Emmanuel Koshini, if I have pronounced it right. And the third person is Wezero Tazarash. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Excellency. It's just a simple question I would like to raise. We hear a lot about violence against the people in Tigray. We hear about looting. We hear about all kinds of cruelties perpetrated, and we also hear about this really unfortunate situation whereby there is this, they say there is this widespread rape of women. I want to ask the Attorney General, what steps have you taken to investigate and bring the perpetrators to justice? How far have we come? Or are these stories just fictional stories that they don't exist? Or if you admit they do exist and they do have taken place, then what measures have been taken by the government and what have been the results so far? It would be very interesting to find out about this as far as I'm concerned, and thank you.
Al-Mutarbiu, Ambassador.
Okay, thank you very much. The second person in line, Mr. Kosilini from Crisis Group. Okay, till he comes back, are you there, Mr. Kosilini? Okay, then we'll give the floor to Wezero Tazarash, but before we give the floor to her, there is a linked up question to Mr. Abarra. It says, we got it on text, this is from Silvia Lavaginoli. It says, could we have more details as to actions taken by the Attorney General's office regarding human rights allegations? It's pretty similar question that of Mr. Abara. So please, Wezero Tazarash.
I'm sorry, Ambassador. I think Mr. Gideon has left. As he was telling you, he had a meeting at 5:30. So
yeah, a few minutes. We were saying few minutes. He was saying few minutes. Okay, no problem. We can still address that. So, you know, we can address it on behalf of him. I would have loved it for you to hear it from, but he was saying 5:30 he had a meeting. We have also other people that could intervene if there's interest. Please, Wezero Tazarash, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Madam Ambassador, the panelists, and good afternoon to the participants. First of all, I am so happy that it's a very good step that Ethiopian government has honored promise of humanitarian access to the Tigray region. This clearance is a very good step towards ensuring the aid workers can deliver the necessary emergency need. However, my question is there a press conference made by Ethiopian government or official bodies before deploying the partners, the 135 partners, 11 international medias, observers, NGOs to the field? Is there really a common sense or discussions before they go there, at least to alarm them, to tell them exactly what is in the field? My second question is how Ethiopian can make the relationship of humanitarian relief and the media more effective. As you know, international bodies are alarmed, like UN, European Union, you can name it, at pressure on media and NGOs. So that is, I think, an important issue. My third question is, however, within this context, how you can measure, or Ethiopian government can measure, the significant escalation in humanitarian needs. Do they immediately reach all the people in need with all the assistance they urgently required? So this is my three questions. And if there is really a free access, free movement to the areas where really the need is there. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you very much, Wazir Tazarrash, all pertinent questions. We thank you for that. Let's add one more question and then we'll give the floor back to the panelists. I see Dr. Zarihun.
Thank you very much, Madam Ambassador. My question is, I think, for His Excellency Mr. Mutuku. It's a very short one because I follow this issue closely in terms of news. I've seen a couple of very short videos that the World Food Program chief posted on his website with his own mobile phone, and it's extremely informative. Why don't you personally do this, or why don't you allow any kind of journalist that you sanction that can move with you and show us a couple of videos? It doesn't have to be a report or a documentary, just to tell us what is going on. Because saying that you have so many places, camps, distribution centers, really doesn't explain much unless we actually see some videos that are extremely informative. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Okay, let me give the floor back to the panelists, Mr. Mutuku, Mr. Tasfahun, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Ambassador. Thank you, those participants who raise questions for clarity. Let me begin with the press conference. I think yesterday the press release was made by the Prime Minister Office, Secretary Department on the current humanitarian situation, including the media and other issues that have been implementing in Tigray Regional State. Second, we have established information and the media crew as the Ministry of Peace level. Those who speaks French and English are on board to work with a number of media which transmit their news with French and English. This is the first start. Second, as I rightly mentioned earlier, around 11 international media were deployed yesterday to Tigray Regional State. We expect that they will come up with rich information which will be circulated to the international community. For those who have been interested to know what has been done and what is going on in Tigray Regional State in terms of security, in terms of food, non-food distribution, and human rights. So that, as you rightly suggested earlier, we received a comment and we will see how we can establish robust and efficient media and information channel to address those people who are working with the Ethiopian government, as well as the partners across the globe. This is my first response. Second, regarding the matter need, we don't have a limit. As long as a need on the ground, we will continue. In terms of resource, we don't have any problem. So for 3.5 million beneficiaries, we have sufficient supply for the next 2 months, for March and April. Now we have been purchasing 700,000 wheat from international market through WFP. And even now we are importing around 70,000 wheat through the PSNP program. There are so many partners which are closely working in the food sector. So that is helps us to include or to capture additional number of beneficiaries beyond 3.5. So that the number should be evidence-based. We have to correct exclusion and inclusion error. So these are the mechanisms how we are handling the humanitarian needs in Tigray, even in most parts of Ethiopia, as long as there is a real need on the ground. Third, the free access. I think we do have a culture, Ethiopian culture, when we go to visit our neighbors or our relatives, we need to have something with our hand, either coffee or orange or banana, so that as long as there is a huge need on the ground, the door is open for those who are interested in working with the Ethiopian government, with the capacity building, the food and non-food supply, so that we continue. Even now we are preparing to provide them blanket approval. Now we have a plan to replace a case-by-case approach to a blanket-based approach. This helps us to create safe and free movement to the partners. As I mentioned earlier, we have shown interest to work in the Tigray Regional State. The question which was raised to Dr. Gedeon for information to check human rights violations, the rape and other cases, one technical force has already been established, which comprises Ministry of Women, Children and Youth, General Attorney, Federal Police, and other related institutions, which are working in the peace and security area. So they are on the field, now are checking those deviations, and those acts which deviates the international humanitarian law and humanitarian rights. So we'll continue. It was rightly mentioned by Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister of Foreign Affairs yesterday for the 46th General Council of Human Rights. As you may come across, the news which reflects those statements which are reached by the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs. These are the questions. These are the responses regarding questions which was raised earlier. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tomitiku. Mr. Tesfaun, do you have anything to add on it? I think it was expressly.
Yeah, so I think I will have some points to raise, and I will use my previous experience to share some issues related to general security of the region and the country. I think one thing to understand is to take the context and the gravity of the attack into consideration. As you know, most of the service was destroyed by the TPLF, and it was really hard for the federal government to reconnect and reestablish the damaged infrastructure. But the media is focusing on negative campaign and also some fake news that are not going away. I think one thing that we understand as a government officials is how strong a media stain or a media scar can be, because most of the things are getting debunked, but the narrative still persists. For example, related to my agency, there was a media campaign that says there were 20,000 Eritrean refugees missing, which is not true and which is not quoted according to the High Commissioner's speaking. It was a misquoting of the High Commissioner. We tried to correct it, and we are giving data after data, but still the narrative remains as to 20,000 are still missing. The other thing is also what the Mituku and Dr. Gedeon had already explained. The 80% inaccessible or 80% unreached issue is also clearly debunked by the one who said it, but still the wrong idea or the wrong information is getting away. So I think we have to work a lot from the government side and also from other concerned Ethiopians in correcting and in rectifying the media circulating fake news and also unsolicited information. The other thing that I want to point also or bring to your attention is the fact that the TPLF had spread out more than 13,000 convicted criminals into the towns and cities of Tigray. These were those who were in the prisons of Tigray, but whenever the TPLF leaves a certain town, it will go to the prison, it will collect those dangerous criminals that were convicted and that were serving their sentences, and it will arm them and group them in groups and then spread them across the towns. So most of the crimes and most of the issues that are happening in these areas are orchestrated by these groups, and the government is trying hard to retake those who are wandering the cities, those criminals who are wandering the cities back to their place, which is the prison. So you have to understand that the government is working a lot to make sure that the region is peaceful and services are retained, but still there are some issues that we are working on. The other thing related to the refugees is there is also a fake narrative that's going on with the media that says there is a forced return of Eritrean refugees to Eritrea by the Eritrean army. This is also unsolicited and unfounded claim. So far, we are tracking Eritrean refugees that are scattered across the region. As you might know, every refugee has its own ID, and that ID is really in a good standard ID. That means it can't be faked and it can't be forged. So we have also a database that is run by UNHCR and that is global in its nature. So we can detect refugees who are scattered from these two camps, and we can know to the last detail that how many of them are found in the other parts of Tigray. So we are really working on, and we are so far able to collect more than 70% of those who are missing, and still we are confident that most of them are in Western Tigray and in some towns in Amhara. So as I said earlier, we have the breakdown of the last detail of those refugees who were in the two camps, and there is no data there is no evidence that shows there is a forced return from us or from UNHCR. We have also interviewed all refugees who came from Misas and Shemelba, and we have asked them about this narrative or this claim, and they told us that they didn't prove us that there was a forced return of Eritrean refugees to Eritrea. This is raised in the questions and answers section, and I just want to address that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ato Tesfan, for that elaborate response. There are two questions that have not been answered, 2 or 3 questions. The 2 of them are related with human rights situation. I will address them on my concluding remarks. And then also there is one question that if Mr. Mituku can address quickly about comments discussion between the government and the NGOs when they enter, what kind of understanding there is. There was one question mentioned like in this direction. And then also about giving access to the media and showing a real image that was mentioned by Dr. Zarion. They can all be addressed in my concluding remarks, or one of the panelists will kindly respond to them. Now we have two questions left with the time we have. The first one is Emmanuel. I don't know if you are back from Crisis Group, and the second one is Ms. Catherine Wunderskut from VRT. By the way, VRT had entered Ethiopia end of November, December, has openly, had an access to all parts of Tigray, has videoed, has been sending every day television programs, and we were happy that we had facilitated that access, but we don't know whether the television is putting a balanced story. We have a question about that, but still, we'll always engage the media community, because we believe that working together is the best way, and fighting lack of information is quite important. So please, consecutively, Mr. Emmanuel, then Madam van der Soet. Thank you very much.
Madam Ambassador, it's I think
okay.
the person who.
Okay, Ato Emmanuel.
Yeah.
Ato Emmanuel,
okay, can I continue?
No?
Yeah,
Ato
Emmanuel
Koshima. Mr. Emmanuel Koshima, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you for giving me this opportunity. And I have like one question concerning with citizen participation in diplomacy. There are a lot of questions raised during the discussion about the pressure from the council, and also there are like other questions about we don't have enough information about what is going on in the Tigray region. And for that matter, is there I mean, this kind of thing, does it exist like a short video which describes about what kind of, I mean, the situation in Ethiopia, for example, how the situation was before while TPLF was in power, and then after, during the transition period or the reform, and then after, during this conflicting period. And if there are like this kind of short videos about the government effort, about humanitarian activities or other things, and also there are some conflicts or human rights issues, if these videos exist, and then we citizens also have like an opportunity to disseminate these short videos either on social media like Twitter, or we have also our own circle. For example, one of my friend, I mean, he's in Norway, and one of the politicians asked him, do you really love your country? Some people give us like some information. We know those information, and those information is wrong, but you guys, you don't provide us like the correct information. So if you love your country, it's a time to act. It's a question like that. And so is there a way for us like to access this kind of reliable information without information? And if the information is not true, we are not going to argue about something which we don't have any information. So just if it is possible from the embassies, we want to have an access to those kind of information, so that then we have like our own circle. In the commission, we know some people who are working in the commission. We know some people who are working in another department, so that we can also share those information, and indirectly we can also influence by as a citizen to participate on you can call it a citizen democracy, I mean diplomacy, or something. We can take our own share than the government or the embassy using our own informal channel. So just, I want to know whether you plan to have like not a long video like for 20 minutes, nobody's paying attention for that. Maybe 4 or 5 minutes which describe different situations so that we can share to the people. And yeah, to play our own role during this difficult time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Emmanuel. Very pertinent point raised. Madam van der Soet, please, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Ambassador. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Just to make one point, thank you for mentioning VRT. Having been able to visit Tigray, that was my colleague indeed. We are a public broadcaster, so we really want to give the right information. And if your colleague was saying that the media intends to, well, take away the fake information, we don't need fake information. We want information as such, and therefore it is very important that we can have access to the ground. I'm only asking one question on a report by Amnesty International that will be published tomorrow, and that's why I want to double check with you. They mention a massacre in Aksum, allegedly committed by Eritrean troops in that town in November, the end of November last year, killing hundreds of people. That is what Amnesty International says, and I just wanted to have your comment about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the two, one comment and question. So now, Mr. Matiku, are you there? Is he around? Well, I felt like, you know, questions need to be, you know, always in the session I chair, questions need to be responded to. So this was a question by Wazarota Zarash. I think most of our questions were responded to. A common approach on discussing when the humanitarian bodies go down to the field. It's a pertinent question. We will raise it to him because I don't have a ready-made answer for this. I don't know if Mr. Tasfahun can address it, but we will definitely come back to you on that. The agreement is there, so it means there is a terms of reference on how to engage on the ground based on international law. But with regards to briefings, we will check and come back to you. We'll be more than happy to do that. With regards to the video that was raised by Dr. Zarihun, this is something that is being asked by everyone. I want to give a very balanced view of my own. A number of officials, you know, starting from Filippo Grande of UNHCR, David Leslie of World Food Programme, you know, the British Foreign Secretary, recently the American diplomats, many of them, when they go there, there is, you know, an image that you see about the surroundings. And there are many also newscasts where we see about the region Tigray and how things are when the president visited, President Sahle-Work recently visited. But I understand and I sense and I share your concern if there is a good video, but VRT has done a good job. I don't know why VRT you're not promoting. By the way, the entire European Union ambassadors have circulated that video, I know. And it was very open. I encourage everyone to Google VRT and see their production of December. It was consecutively for 3 days. They were interviewing people, they were interviewing everyone, and I will complain openly here. They did not ask even a Warada official. You know what? Warada is a district official. They only asked the passerbys and the likes. I don't believe it was a very balanced report. But you know, it was there on the open. It was being used by many people. It's good. They have gone there and reported. Médecins Sans Frontières, they have done 2 articles on the situation. So it doesn't mean that the entire thing was shut out and as the media says, a blackout of that sort. But now the most important thing is additional 7 media houses, and that will include 11 journalists are going to enter. I've already got their permissions, and I hope they will help balance the fake news that is going around in many ways. So I think just to quickly address these 2 points, and Madam Tazarash will come back to you on this question. And I think with regards to the question of public diplomacy and getting a very brief, you know, comparisons on what has been happening before the transition, then the transition and the current problem since November to get a video and the like. Definitely there are productions of how the situation looked like through the transition, and then what some of the achievements and challenges are through the transition. So these two episodes are out there. The last episode is just a very recent development from November, and you can imagine we are under a lot of challenge to handle for a nation. But I think that part should go side by side. It's a very constructive comment. And then we will see, we have a number of pieces that we can send you, including, the promotion of the Gabata al-Hagar, which my prime minister launched. And then it was a very interesting, ecotourism project. With all these challenges, we have rallied about 4.2 billion Ethiopian birr to build 3 eco lodges. Well, of course, it is for the good of the economy doing that. So we will take your views positively, and then we will work on it. With regards to alleged, attacks on civilians in Aksum Sion, Madam, that's what you're referring to, yeah? Aksum Sion Church. To my surprise, I don't know how this thing could happen in November, Madam, because November 21, this is Ethiopian calendar I'm talking about, Hidar High and I don't know, +7 or 8 would take it to November 27 or 28, is an annual huge celebration of Saint Mary of Zion's event. And the residents, in fact, that was one of the televised events. This was immediately after the government said the law and order operation has been completed. So people, residents of Aksum Sion, were being interviewed. Very sad that if it were last year, we would have people flocking around to celebrate this event. But they were saying it was celebrated, but it was very, very quiet. This is a fact that you can get if you Google through or you check YouTube of Ethiopian television of November, around November 27. I want to encourage you to do that. So if it is in November, we suspect it is a very, very crazy idea. And usually look what happened about Maikadra, what happened about the sexual allegation, which was established as true by the government. This thing has not been established by anyone, that people around it, people live around it. So I don't want to play the Attorney General's role here because it's not my job. But Madam, what I can assure you is that things of a sort of like that, you cannot pass by keeping quiet. The people will shout. So I believe it would be a wrong allegation, but I don't want to conclude it in that way. But I would urge that, for journalists that are here present, to see the approach that is progressing in terms of investigating human rights allegations. Unlike our history in the past, the recent past, the Human Rights Commission of Ethiopia is independently investigating things. Well, this was in fact a fact quoted by the European Union for one thing, positively, and by many others. We are happy about that. And also by the Human Rights Commission in Geneva. So that is being investigated. The Attorney General in this short period of time have already done the Maikadra investigation. They have publicized it to the public. And today there was also a police report on the due process of law. The same thing for the sexual allegations, since it was established as something unfortunately that has happened. The next step is to bring the perpetrators to the court of law. So this is proceeding and this is continuing. I don't think, frankly, if Attorney General was here, would have a different response, because sometimes, as ambassadors, we need to follow what's going on back home. So this is something that I can assure you is happening. So let's say that this allegation has happened, Madam van der Schoot. If it has happened, it will not be left like that. It will be investigated. There are a number of other investigations going on, so the truth will come out. It is a very highly unlikely scenario. I think in the interest of time, I will have to conclude. And in my conclusion, I think I have to address, again, I am going to play the, unless Mr. Miteku and Mr. Tesfaun, you have anything to add, I will be concluding in 2 minutes. Mr. Miteku, I think we have lost him again. He's in the field, as I have noted to you. Mr. Tesfaun, please. You are in mute, Mr. Tesfaun.
As I said it in my introductory remarks, Ethiopia has a proud history of welcoming refugees and also sorting out things peacefully and sorting out things in a just way. And this is not reflective of the whole of the story in Ethiopia. For example, as Madam Ambassador has rightly said, the Human Rights Council Commission of Ethiopia has found out that there are some cases of rapes in Tigray and is investigating the issue. There are also some minor issues here and there, but the total thing that should be underscored here is that there is a very much great progress over every day, and now we are able to speak that we have access to almost most of Tigray. We have access to more than 90% of Tigray, and a lot of organizations are getting access to give humanitarian assistance to the region and to the people residing there. And we have also progressed a lot in terms of security and in terms of giving service to our citizens and also to the refugees that are residing in that region. In this regard, what I want to reiterate now and then is that there are no missing refugees in Tigray, and we are saying this time and again that they are scattered throughout the region, and we are relocating them and we are collecting them to the 2 safest camps, and we have also more than enough evidence that shows there are a lot of refugees in Addis Ababa and in other major towns of the country. So all in all, there is a lot of progress happening in the region, and there is a lot of positive things that are coming out day and day. Compared to the grotesque attacks of the TPLF and compared to the total destruction of the infrastructure, especially telecommunication and banking sector in the region, we have been able to maintain services in an unprecedented manner, and we have been able to maintain services in a quick and very much efficient manner. And I think that's what we want to portray in this session. And also, if there are some concerns, we are open that we can communicate with anyone and we can provide information, because the best way to battle fake news is to provide proper information. And I really appreciate Ms. van der Schut in this regard. We have some guidelines to give access to media in the region and also in the country in general. The Ethiopian Broadcasting Authority, in collaboration with Ministry of Foreign Affairs, are working on giving access as short as possible and as quick as possible. That's how we have come to give access to more than 7 media outlets to the region. I think with this and with continuing efforts of opening up and with continuing efforts of improving services and delivery, then the gloomy picture of the country in the media would become more brighter and will become more warmer, like the spring we are going to have.
Thank you very much. I will continue with that positive note that Mr. Tesfaun said in concluding. I think I would say only 3 general points. The first one is we would ask journalists, media houses, think tanks, and colleagues from different parts of the bodies that are represented here to see the case of Ethiopia in a very long-term perspective. We need to have a context. This is the Ethiopia that you know for many years back, and the Ethiopia that you will know as long as our breath is around. So we need not be rushing to see a doomsday scenario in the country. These are people that have the instincts of survival, whether there is development cooperation or not. And I will link this to the 70% assistance that the government is covering. And we need to understand that Ethiopia on its own is doing a lot to support its own compatriots in Tigray region and other areas. Of course, we are not an island. We live in the international community. With the international community, we always appreciate supports and assistance. But beyond that, what really damages the country is bad propaganda or bad news. So Ethiopia is the least of the countries that would benefit from that. So we ask for objective journalism. We're not saying that you have to simply praise what's happening in the country, no. But we require objective journalism when it comes to Ethiopia. Take us as your partners. If you need anything, any information, we are there to support. And I want to fight this 80% rhetoric. You know, in Ethiopia, in every place you go, people live in the countryside still. 80% of the population lives in the countryside. So how on earth, if the government is providing 3.5 million people in Tigray assistance, how could 80% of it could not be accessible? This is absurd. I don't know how this figure is picked up. You know, the media needs to help us on this. It's a very, very wrong assumption. And again, a very bad judgment on the country, Ethiopia. So we would ask you to investigate this on your own and try to report a positive aspect. The second thing I want to mention is that with regards to development cooperation, I think Mr. Vincent Chadwick is reporting consecutively on this. We appreciate that. It's a two-way street. We are providing the necessary input all the time whenever the European Union is requesting anything to know. We are partners. We have a very positive track record when it comes to implementation of development cooperation, whether it is a World Bank project, European Union project, or any others. So it is a country that really implements projects properly, and that has been through its words. Again, I would ask, we need to have a context about Ethiopia. So as Mr. Chadwick, you've rightly said, if this assessment goes to the 6 to 7 years of the package that the European Union extends, it doesn't mean that it doesn't harm Ethiopia. But this is a sovereign country. We negotiate as much as we agree. Then it's, the rest of it is, as to how it goes. So we urge media houses, think tanks, to research and provide the right information as well to the European Union and help them on their conclusions. Be a partner to both of us, and be, if you want, a good mediator on this part. Check the facts yourself and see how things are improving. In this way, we can have a very good understanding. The third point I would like to conclude with is that the very important point mentioned by Mr. Emmanuel and the fact that Ethiopia is not telling its story. I don't want to argue too much about this. I will agree totally. We have not been selling what has been done in Ethiopia in a proper manner. So I can promise you that the media houses that will be entering soon would come out, let's hope, would come out with something balanced. But in addition to that, we are very much ready to provide you with this balanced information. We want to encourage you to visit many of the websites of the embassies in Europe, not only our websites and social medias in Brussels, because many of them research, dig, and try to put out lots of facts about Ethiopia. It's not only about the conflict. There are so many other positive stories that you can talk about Ethiopia. Ethiopia is late to go for a national election in early June. So let's focus on that. It will bring us, a very democratic and, a government elected by the will of the people. So we should not be simply having a very narrow view about the situation in Ethiopia. Ethiopia is larger than that. So we want you to project a very optimistic, I wouldn't say positive, optimistic perspective about my country, Ethiopia. We thank you very much for spending all this time. I see on the screen there were about 45 entries. There are still 46 entries, 10 have left. I give the embassy a great big right for that, for keeping everyone here still at 10 something, 4 something. So thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to see you in another opportunity. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.